Right, without further delay, we're going to talk about pre-boarding. Let me just go back to my wonderful screen here. And pre-boarding, I am excited to welcome Dustin, and I think with some assistance from Ashley. Dustin started skydiving in the Yukon and intended it to only be a one-time experience. This quickly transformed into an addiction and he started regularly jumping shortly after. He particularly enjoys belly flying, canopy relative work, video flying, and sharing his passion with novice skydivers as a coach. Dustin was also on our wonderful Canadian Armed Forces parachute team, the Skyhawks, and now with over 400 jumps is an active CSPA coach too. So now I've got to do the lovely task of finding Mr. Dustin on my computer. Bear with me. Oh, Dustin. Oh, there you are. I'm going to make you a co-host. And there you are. And I've asked you to unmute.
Hi. Is it working?
Hi, Dustin.
All right.
It's working. This is all your floor, the pre-boarding.
Cool, too easy. All right, so now that Brian Murray has dipped into 9 minutes of my time, we'll see what we can squeeze in. But so I'm doing gear checks and of course following the CSPA guidelines as well. So obviously gear checks are important to do before every jump. You know, no matter how rushed you are or how much manifest is trying to push you onto a load, take the time and give yourself a proper gear check. It's important and can prevent a lot of issues. So first thing, of course, for show up at the drop zone, you want to make sure you have a DZ and the aircraft briefing for the aircraft that you're using. For those that's jumping at SVI, it's of course just the board's just in the corner for the weather and that sort of thing. And make sure that the proper gear that you're using is meant for the discipline that you're going to be using. So, for example, some of the rental rigs aren't free fly appropriate. So make sure that you're using proper gear for what you plan on doing. And if you're not sure if your gear is appropriate, of course, just ask somebody. Another thing, make sure your skydive plan is communicated, prepared, take the time to practice, plan your jump and jump your plan. So for gear checks, I like to, do it systematically. I start from kind of top left, like I'm reading a book, and work my way down. So we'll start with the 3-ring system. However you decide to do your gear checks, I would suggest doing it the same way every time. So that way you develop a system and it's methodical and you're not going to miss anything. It's the important steps to check here. So with the 3-ring system, make sure first off you only have 1 ring through another. And then the riser loop through the smallest ring only. The loop, of course, is in good condition. You check through the grommet and make sure that it's not frayed, like some of Brian's pictures there. So the loop through the riser, then through the grommet on the housing, and the cables through the housings, and make sure that it's stowed up in the channel so it's not dangling out, all out there. Of course, do it on both sides, and like Brian had shown you guys, that is not overly corroded or anything going to cause damage to the loop, or potentially, get snagged, cut away. So for the webbing, take a look at the webbing, make sure it's not twisted. I removed my rubber bands. Brian wouldn't judge me. So make sure it's not twisted. It's all fed through properly. If you have any snaps, I got a snap down here. Make sure it's closed and nothing's falling out. Your excess webbing retained in the keepers, not rubber bands. and as well as the keepers at the bottom of the rig. Handle secure. So take a moment, make sure the Velcro is actually holding the handle in. It's not going to fall out, or you're not going to bump it out by accident. And of course, the rig should be properly fitting and adjusted correctly. Yeah, so work my way to the other side, flip over to the reserve. Of course, want to make sure that the closing loop again is not frayed or anything. Brian just had this last week, so I trust that he checked it. Reserve pin is in the proper location. You know, there's kind of a keeper area here that it's not poking out of or anything like that, or it hasn't worked its way out to the end. Seal in place. So the rigger seal, make sure that's not broken. And the ripcord cable free in the housing. So I kind of checked the ripcord housing by just grabbing it from up here and giving a little slide through. Just kind of a wiggle to see if it's if there's any dirt or debris that's snagging it from moving freely, because you don't want it to obviously get caught in a cutaway type situation. Depending on if you have an RSL, make sure that's in the appropriate place. That the RSL is in good condition, not damaged or anything. And of course, your AED turned on and set correctly. Obviously at SVI, we have 120-foot offset, so make sure it gets done every jump. The Mars ones are complicated. If you ever have any confusion, ask Brian or read the manual. So flip over to the main. So again, obviously you want to make sure that once you're done checking, the flaps are secured properly. So for the main, again, make sure the closing loop's in good condition, depending on how your manufacturer specifications. Generally, it's doing the smile. I know some of the crew rigs want it pointing the other way, but so go with what the manufacturer of your rig suggests. The pin seated correctly. Pilot chute is secure. There's no extra fabric coming out. I did do one horny gorilla jump where pilot chute had worked its way out. Not to me, but the other guy ended up shooting up in the air, and that's of course pretty dangerous, especially in a sit position. The handle's accessible, and free from not easily to get knocked back inside the VOC. And the bridle, make sure that's routed correctly. There's a few different ways of routing it. I just defer to what the manufacturer suggests, but of course there's more than one way to route the bridle. And the pilot chute cock, of course at this point you can't actually look at the pilot chute Brian had out, but we'll rely on the window and see if the indicator is in the window showing that it's cocked. So that's it kind of for the rig. I'll speak to a bit of the accessories. So make sure your altimeter is set correctly. Again, we do have an offset depending on the drop zone you're at. Audible turned on and offset. Here's offset. Goggles in place. They're not broken or anything like that. Have your gloves ready if you choose to wear gloves. And of course, the appropriate headwear. And just generally be aware of snag possibilities. So, especially in the 206, some days you get a couple tall people and your handles are quite easily bumped. If there's a board behind, if you're sitting JM, for example, be aware that could potentially knock out your. I had a pilot chute get popped out, or my pin popped out on my main on a flight. It's kind of scary. So not to go too far to the plain stuff, but like I said before, like follow it, make a system, follow it, and don't just go through the motions, but actually try and think about what you're doing and recognize what, not only what you're looking for, but what it does. And that'll kind of help you understand and go through the motions a little bit better with more kind of in-depth look at it. So of course, if you're ever in doubt, ask somebody, particularly a rigger, instructor, or I always keep a copy of my manufacturer manual just to go through again. Like, well, one of Monica's questions, it's actually, at least in my manual, it's specified exactly how they want the pilot or folded. Yeah. So that's all the points that I have for pre-boarding gear check. Any questions?
Well, thank you very, very, very much, Dustin. Look at that. And even below your time by 2 seconds. Does anyone have any questions? Again, it's just the hands up icon in your reaction. Going once, going twice. Perfect. Awesome. Dustin, thank you again very much. Ashley, you were a wonderful Vanna. Thank you.